so much for being here, and please give a very, very warm welcome to Julien Creuzet. Now, Julien, I'm very excited that we finally can have a conversation. It's been an unrealized project. We only met actually in very transitory situations, and I wanted to begin actually with the beginning because we quoted a lot of Edouard Glissant today, and we share this mutual admiration for the poet, philosopher, and literary critic Edouard Glissant, who is a great toolbox for the 21st century. And those of you who haven't read him, it's urgent to read Edouard Glissant. And I wanted to ask you to tell us a little bit, you are from Martinique, and so is Glissant, to tell us a little bit about what you took from Glissant, how Glissant inspires you.
Glissant was my grandfather, but it's not true. But I'm very sad not to have a chance to meet him for real. But I'm knowing his voice, and if it's in my back, I can hear it's him. And I think the concept of two mondes, or the concept of creolization, it's really interesting and fundamental. And I think now the art contemporary and the new creation is about creolization. And we can speak about constellation, or we can speak about rhizome, like roots of the trees connection. But the idea of the capitalism starts with the colonization, and it's one place. It's the Caribbean. It's the New World, America, and different civilization connect in this period. But the connection is not a good connection like we can have a talk and have a good moment. It was a bad connection with the story of the slave trade. And in this moment, nobody can imagine some people can try to discuss and find a new language and a new culture. And this culture called Creole, and Creole it's a mix of different language, Spanish, Portuguese, Carib language, Arawak language, French, English, of course, and different other languages from Africa.
And this idea of mixing different languages is of course also part of your installations. You did, and we have images, I think, of some of your installation. I saw your amazing show at the Palais de Tokyo, very archipelago-like. Can you tell us a little bit about your practice of doing these installations?
All the time, I'm trying to put fiction inside the installation or the exhibition. For example, when we start to speak about creolization and the idea mixed language, I think in the Creole language, I have different words. I can know exactly where the word from. And inside, I think I can find imaginary of Yoruba language, about Portuguese language, about English and French language. In the same time, I like when exhibition is like one artwork and not exhibition with a connection and relation with different artwork. I think the exhibition like one artwork, it's interesting because it's like all. It's a two, like a two monde of Edouard Glissant. And we can make a specific ecosystem, a specific atmosphere, and in this atmosphere, try use different sense. For example, what you see, what you hear, what you feel, and the interaction you can have, for example, with the music, with the question of the performance moment, and how we can have different point of views when you look at the connection between the transparency with the different sculpture.
And that's actually interesting because I wanted to ask you about the sound. Yoko Ono often told us about the sort of sonic dimension in exhibitions. And there is a wonderful dialogue which I found online between you and Elizabeth Povinelli of the Anthropology and Gender Studies at Columbia University. And you discuss your sound works, which are present in many of your installations. I saw it at Palais de Tokyo. And there is a sort of a song montage moment. You bring together languages like English, French, Creole, but also Czech, many different languages. And then, of course, you also bring together different genders. Can you talk a little bit about these sonic mixes or combinations?
I think I like the idea of the narration, and the voice inside the exhibition can tell about a story and can give more information. When you see a sculpture and you hear, for example, one poetry or one story, you make a connection between the form you see. The form, it's most difficult to understand directly because of some resistance. And the resistance is like if I meet you now, I don't know who you are exactly. I need to pass many time with you for many years for have a short idea about who you are. And I think the question of the exhibition, the question of the artwork speak about that. And I'm trying put many relation and many way with the music and the sculpture for try to create this thing.
Another aspect is, of course, and we mentioned that before, we started the day with Tao Lewis and talked about, I mean, Steffi often says, patterns that connect. And it's fascinating that so many artists we see here today at DLD also are poets or work with poetry. And so that's why we thought, as part of this panel at DLD, that we have in every discussion also a poetry reading. So an exhibition can always hide another exhibition, and a panel can always hide also another performance, a poetry reading or a film screening. So I wanted to ask you to maybe start the poetry reading. And of course, Glissant said that we should always have multilingualism. So we have, I think, you reading it first in French, and I will then read it in...
For start, I need to introduce this poetry, and use my black oracle. And my black oracle, it's my phone and my laptop. And I call my phone Black Oracle because I'm thinking about the obsidian rock, the black glass, like a mirror. And the first mirror in the story of humanity you can find in America Latina. And this rock looks like the same surface of one iPhone, and now we can ask why we have this object, and we can make many things with. And another thing interesting is it's like a mirror. And when we work in the office every day on the laptop, we are alone and we can create alienation, a situation like when you're boring or you feel you alone, and all the time you can see your reflection and you're not alone. It's like a story of the psychology, because in the room of the famous psychologue in the father of the psychology.
You mean in Freud? Or?
Yeah, Freud, sorry. And he have a window, and he have his desk, and in front of his window, he put a mirror because he would like to see himself before he see outside. And the telephone and the laptop is the same thing. And I can start.
Fascinating, because Lina talked about that also, words and mirrors.
Je me martèle la tête. Hard disk, Google Drive. Ça me suit encore. Je me vois tel que je suis, hard disk, Google Drive. Sur mon iMac, je me filme au bord du lac, contemplant les comètes. J'ai dit ça, tu me vois lumineux dans un rectangle noir. Tu me vois un bout de moi pris dans le marbre. Tu vois ce qu'il reste de te. La trace de mon âme qui se fixe, tu me vois refléter à la manifestation de la lumière. Je converse avec une flamme. Le charbon, je tiens ma face lisse couverte d'empreintes grasses.
I hammer my head, hard disk, Google Drive, follows me still. I see myself as I'm Intel, hard disk, Google Drive, on my iMac, filming myself on the edge of the lake, contemplating comets. I've already said this. You see me, luminous, in a rectangle, black, you see me, a piece of me, trapped in marble. You see what remains of the trace of my soul, setting. You see me, reflected, manifested in the light. I converse with a flame, blue coal. I keep my face smooth, covered in prints, greased.
With more movement. La limpieza était nos mœurs des pieds à la tête. Divinité, divinisée, s'essouffle, coupé court. Encens et cierge rouge sont des poncifs poussiéreux. Si tu désires la foi de la Santeria, l'œuf au fond de la bouche, la cigarette au fond de l'antre, ses doigts au fond de ta bouche pour rendre les cheveux longs de la vipère. Il n'y a pas de Saint-Père pour rendre le venin des esprits orphelins, lumière incendiaire à la surface du velin.
Yoruba's deserted cave, wooden faces were passages towards the universe, customary custom on the land before the waves. Limpieza was our custom from top to toe. Defied divinity runs out of breath, cut short. Incense and red candle are dusty cliches. If you desire the Santeria faith, the egg at the back of the mouth, cigarette at the back of the den, these fingers at the back of your mouth to render the viper's long hair. There is no Holy Father to make the venom of orphan spirits burning light on the vellum surface. Beyond the demons from above, Philao, land of salt, one had to grow roots without lament. Thick nostril, smoke the cold that night, evil under the roofs. Remember about your ball-like head, you were going to contain it, so it did not roll. Cannonball, coal in his slanting eyes, crab cries before blooming, tempera gaze. Typhoon, monsoon, lighthouse, light from the possible beginnings, to paraphrase. Yoruba's cavern déserte, et ça continue en français.
Yes.
Big round of applause for Julien. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you also is, of course, VR, because we looked last night at the VR project of yours, and one of the, of course, important aspects always at DLD is to think about experiments in art and technology, or as at the Sepentine we call them new experiments in art and technology, following up on Billy Kluwer. And you did such an experiment actually in Arles, in the south of France. It's a VR work you did, I think, in connection there to the photography school. It addressed the cultivation and also the distribution of corn. Can you tell us about what you did with VR?
VR, it's an interesting experience. You can mix the question of the reality and make augmentation. And I make a project called My Show Marlboro. It's like corn and Marlboro cigarette. And for me, the story of the corn, it's from the colonization in America Latina, and now we can find corn in the streets in Paris. It's a very cheap and poor nourriture for people who don't have money. And in the same way, the people use and buy this food. It's junkie and use a crack drug, and it's very horrible, and have a prostitution in the same way in the Barbès streets close to Gare du Nord. And with this point, I'm trying to make a connection when you make a very huge trip with drug, because when you take crack, it's a trip with 2 minutes, or it's very, very short, and you need to take again all the night. When your body is tired, you stop and you sleep for maybe 12 or 24 hours. And I imagine a trip with the pre-Columbian civilization and how we can refine the beginning and the origin of the corn history, the corn culture and plantation, and make a visit and a tour in Aztec and pre-Columbian and see the question of the pyramids, the Olmec head, and the different elements like that, and connect with Paris like a very raccourci, like when you resume a very long story.
Now, the future, of course, are these experiments with, art and technology, but we also should never forget, I think, that in this digital age, we have more and more information, but not necessarily more memory. So it's, in a way, the case, as Rem Koolhaas once said here at DLD, that maybe amnesia is somewhere at the very core of the digital age. And that's why Eric Hobsbawm told us, always at the Sepentine, we need to protest against forgetting and also think about pioneers who might be forgotten. Now, I'll ask you last night at dinner to tell me about somebody, from previous generations, a pioneer who inspired you. And you gave a super interesting answer of a musician whom I once met with Edouard, who is also a linguist.
Jacques Courcil.
Jacques Courcil. So I wanted to ask you to tell us the story of Jacques Courcil, because I think we should all know about Jacques Courcil and know more about Jacques Courcil.
Jacques Courcil is a linguist. He's very old. I think he is born in 1923. And when he was 20 years, it's a he know very well all the writer of Negritude movement, like Aimé Césaire, Léopold Sédar Senghor, or Léon Gontran Damas in French Guiana. And he go to Senegal after the independence, and he gives the assistant of Sédar Senghor in Dakar. In this moment, and Senghor like him because he know all the story and all the origin of the Negritude. And the Negritude is an interesting concept because it's before Edouard Glissant, before the Fanon thinking and the new generation of writer. And Negritude is a question of I, and how the black communities can have powerful and respect and can exist in this world after the colonization, after the slave trade. And Césaire, Senghor, and Damas go to Paris, make school, and learn all the German language, the French language, the English language, the Greek language, and know very, very well all the roots of the language and start write a poetry. And the poetry, it was a voice for speak about revolution, speak about how I can exist, and have many beautiful sentences of Césaire you can read. It's a recommendation. And Jacques decide sometimes the question of the voice, it can problematic because we can speak in the same time together, and he start make a trumpet, and he use the infinite breath for make an infinite sound in the trumpet. And you can listen, he make a version of Les Grands Chaos d'Edouard Glissant in music, and you can hear on Spotify, I think.
And he performed at our Glissant exhibition, actually, with Assad Raza at Villa Ampa. Last question, the usual question, the only recurrent question in our conversation, the Unrealized project. We know very little about artists' Unrealized project. Do you have a project you haven't had time yet to realize, or too big to be realized, utopia, utopic project, a dream?
It's a good... my answer is it's very long, maybe. I think if we are to DLD, we are for think about how we can think about the future, how we can work together. Hope is for this reason. And now I would like to think about the art archive in the world, like the African object in the museum in Europe. And now we have the political question how the African object can return to Africa, but the story changed and the world changed. And the Islam religion started in Africa, in the Black Africa in the 10th century, and the story of this object start to disappear in this moment. Now, I'm thinking about how we can think one international museum and how this museum can move in different country with different collection and different objects with from different civilization, and how we can have a movement, infinite movement, and we can share all this information and not think about the question of the possession.
There could not be a more wonderful conclusion. Julien, thank you so much. A big round of applause for Julien Creuzet. Thank you.